If you ask anyone in my family to describe me, you'll get the same polite summary dressed up like a compliment. Hannah is independent. That word lands with an almost audible ellipsis, the kind that hides 1,000 tiny judgments. My Aunt Samina says it with a thin smile, as if the syllables taste sour. My cousin said you before all of this, used to giggle when she said it. Like independent were a pair of shoes too loud for an otherwise quiet outfit. And my little sister Nita, who learned early how to read the rooms our elders ruled, says it like praise and apology rolled into one. Independent, she say, eyes flitting to check if Auntie approves. But, in a good way. I didn't set out to be a walking cautionary tale. I'm 32. I have a steady job as a copy editor at a publishing house. And until recently, I rented a small sunlit flat on a street where the fruit sellers greet me by name. I pay my bills, keep a bookshelf organized by theme and color. Don't judge me, and I know how to fix a sagging curtain rod without calling a man about it. This, in my family's calculations, is admirable until it isn't. It's attractive until it becomes threatening. It's independent until it becomes still not married. Our family dinners are crowded affairs. Platters of saffron rice and skewers of chicken, dishes passing from hand to hand. Laughter so loud it reverberates in your chest, and yet somehow someone always remembers to ask me, between mouthfuls of spiced aubergine, "So, Hannah, any special news?" The question is a sugar-coated bullet. I usually shrug it off, still editing other people's stories. Mine is under revision. They laugh. Then someone says they're all getting younger, Your options, as if men were seasonal fruits and I'd waited too long past ripeness. I used to believe if I achieved enough, if my grammar were crisp enough, my rent paid on time, my clothes pressed, and my hair sleek, they'd leave me alone. But excellence only buys you silence for a moment. The chatter always returns. My mother, God rest her soul, used to dampen the noise with a look. She was soft in speech but sharp in eye. And if my aunt or uncles started in, "What about Dr. Khalid's son? He'd just moved back from London." My mother would lift her chin in that quiet, royal way and change the subject. After she passed, the invisible fence she'd laid around me collapsed like a tent without poles. People stepped over my boundaries as if they were nothing but patterns on the rug. Aunt Samina became the de facto matriarch. She is a woman of clean lines and strict timing. Pressed shalwar kameez that still hold the shape of the iron. Jeweled watches that flash when she pours tea. She keeps her nails impeccably pale and short so she can point without mercy. Stand straight. She told me at Sadia's first bridal fitting 2 months before the event that would change everything. Hunched women looked like they were hiding a secret. "I'm not hiding anything," I said. And I wasn't lying. Not then. "Then stand straight," she repeated. "You're tall. It's a waste if you don't use it." Standing straight around Aunt Samina doesn't mean shoulders back. It means keep your story uncomplicated. It means don't bring in surprises that will shiver the china in her cabinets. My cousin Sadia learned that early. She is small and pretty, with hair that never frizzes and a giggle she can deploy like a silk scarf. She knew how to become the favorite. Drink tea slowly, agree warmly, use phrases like, "Of course, Auntie, and whatever you think best." Sadia's wedding was going to be the social event of the season, not because her fiancé, Hamid, was anything extraordinary, though he was decent and worked in finance, but because Aunt Samina had curated it like a museum exhibit. She arranged the flowers in her mind a month before the florist saw the contract. She had a spreadsheet for the gift registry and a backup spreadsheet in case the first one got corrupted by amateur eyes, which is how she described anyone else's opinion. I was on the guest list, obviously, but I was invited with a particular caution. "You'll sit with Nita," Auntie told me on the phone, her tone precise, like she'd measured each word with a kitchen scale. "With the cousins. It's best to group acquaintances with similar situations." "Similar situations," I repeated, even though I knew what she meant. Unmarried, unattached, independent. I could hear her inhale sharply at my tone too dry. To knowing Anne, I softened it. "That's fine, Auntie. She exhaled like she was reluctant to let me have the last word. Wear something bright. You look tired in pale colors. I smiled after the call. In that way you smile when you're alone and don't want your own. Reflection to see you gritting your teeth. Wear something bright, I said to my empty kitchen. The kettle hissed sympathetically. If I sound bitter, I promise I wasn't. Well, not only bitter, I was also tired and a little anxious, because I did have something I was keeping close to my chest. Warm and private, like a secret inside a coat. I had married 3.5 weeks earlier. It wasn't some wild, rebellious act. There were no neon lights, no Elvis impersonator. There was a simple nikah in a modest office, just us and 2 witnesses, and the imam's voice steady as rain. His name is Yusuf. He's 35, a software engineer whose laugh starts in his eyes before it reaches his mouth. We met last year at a book fair where I was manning the publishing house's table and he was looking for out-of-print, Urdu poetry. We argued fiercely and joyfully about translations while the line at my booth grew. He came back the next day with coffee and a sheet of paper covered in marginalia about Ghalib. And I remember thinking, this is trouble. And then this is exactly the sort of trouble I've been waiting for. We dated quietly, like grown-ups who have weekday obligations and weekend errands. He met Nita early on. There's no hiding anything from my sister. Who can detect a change in my breathing over the phone end? She adored him instantly. He's calm, she said after the first dinner. Like the room gets more air when he's in it. She also, being practical, whispered, "You know Auntie will hate that he's from outside the social loop. He didn't go to their preferred schools. He didn't know how to butter their conversations just so. He didn't come with a family history my aunt could trace like a map laid in a glass case." "I know," I said. "But we're not living in a museum. In an ideal world, we'd have put together a small celebration, invited the people who actually loved us, and then faced the extended family with our heads high and rings on our fingers." But he'd been sent to Karachi on a short-notice work trip 2 to 3 weeks. Max, his manager, had said, and our available window opened almost like a dare. We could marry now, while our courage burned clean, or we could wait and let the doubts nibble our edges. I'd lost too many pieces of myself to hesitation already. So we did it, quietly. The ring glided onto my finger like something it had been practicing for. When the imam pronounced us married, I felt a click down in my bones, a settling. Later, when Yusuf tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and whispered, "Are you okay?" I only nodded on the verge of tears for reasons I couldn't name. Joy, relief, the sense of all my margins expanding at once. And then, like an inconvenient plot twist, Sadia's wedding loomed. 2 weeks after our nikah, the mendi, and the reception, all the ceremonies layered one on top of another. Aunt Samina had personally called to remind me of the dress code. Green for the mendi, jewel tones for the barat, and something refined for the walima, she said. No pastels. And don't wear white or off-white. That's presumptuous. I thought dizzily in a different story I could have told her. Don't worry, Auntie. I'm someone's bride too. I didn't. Yusuf, who had a ticket that could bring him back in time for the reception, had said, "We can tell them together. In person, I'll stand beside you." He makes it sound easy when he says things like that. He is not naive. He has a spine made of wire, cable, and patience like polished stone. But he believes in facing things head-on, not as battle, but as clarity. He believes our truth should be taller than other people's gossip. "We'll tell them," he said. "We'll give them time to be shocked, even to be rude. But we'll stand there and we'll be married regardless." I wanted to believe that would be enough. I wanted to protect the tiny honeymoon of our early marriage, the quiet evenings of cooking together and arguing about poets over chai. The way his presence turned my one-bedroom flat into a place with corners warm enough to sit in again. He left for Karachi 5 days after we signed our names. We stood in the airport's drop-off lane, and he kissed my forehead, and I tucked a note into his palm. "Come home to me." He smiled always. While he was away, the family machinery spun. There were group chats to monitor, Sadia's Mendi menu, and messages from cousins about bangles and hair and how our childhood Doll weddings had nothing on the glitter to come. There were cracks, too, as always. Someone sent an article about how to handle difficult relatives with no explanation. Another cousin, Miriam, sent me a memmed prayer hands emoji after Auntie typed a long paragraph about maintaining decorum, especially for unattached women. She might as well have tagged me by name. What does decorum mean this time? I messaged Nita. She sent a string of skull emojis and then typed, "No solo dancing, no attention seeking, couples enter together during the reception, etc. It's a new rule. For ambiance." Ambiance, I wrote. Of course. "Don't come," she typed suddenly, then deleted it, then typed, "Sorry, I know you'll come. I hate how she makes you small." "I'm not small," I wrote back. "I know," she said. "But she wants you to feel small." I silenced my phone and pressed my hands over my face. The room smelled faintly of cardamom from the tea I'd spilled the night before. The plants in the window leaned toward the sun. My ring clicked softly on the ceramic mug when I lifted it. I pressed my lips to the rim and thought, "I wish you were here, Yusuf." He called that night, video flickering between us. "You look beautiful," he said, because he always says it, but also because he means it. "I'm wearing my teenage hoodie," I told him, tilting the camera down. "It has a coffee stain shaped like the map of Australia." "Still beautiful," he said, and his voice went soft. And for a second I watched his face instead of the screen, like he could see that I needed the words to land somewhere solid. What happened? Just usual pre-wedding chaos and Auntie's rules. He exhaled with a kind of patience that isn't passive. It's measured. "You're not going there to participate in her rules. You're going to celebrate your cousin." "I know," I said, "but her rules tend to multiply like rabbits." He chuckled, then growing serious. "If she crosses a line, I'll leave," I said. It surprised me how easily it came out. "I'll leave." "Good," he said. "And if you want me to get on an earlier flight?" "No," I said. Because the thought of him rushing through airports and logistics for a maybe made my chest tight. "Just get here when you're supposed to. We'll tell them together. We'll stand there, remember?" He nodded, slow and careful. "We'll stand there." The days spilled forward in little errands. I picked up my green dapata from the tailor. I bought jasmine-scented hair oil because my aunt had once said my hair looked dry and intellectual, which is how she codes for messy when she's trying to be kind. I prepped a small gift basket for Sadia silk scrunchies, a handwritten letter the compact she'd admired in a shop window last month. I pressed my pale pink lipstick into the card's fold, leaving a kiss print she would roll her eyes at and then keep anyway. Sadia is not cruel. She is simply obedient. There's a difference that matters until it doesn't. On the morning of the Mendi, my phone buzzed with a message in the family chat. Reminder: couples enter together. Singles will be seated in Gallery B until dinner. A photograph followed a screenshot of the seating chart. Gallery B. As if it were a museum annex where we could be displayed under softer lighting so we didn't disturb the main collection. I typed, "I thought this was a wedding, not Noah's Ark," then deleted it and put my phone face down. My heart wasn't even angry. It was tired the way your legs are tired 30 minutes into a run you never meant to take. I looked at my clothes laid out on the bed, the gleam of the embroidery. When I slipped on the outfit, the mirror gave me back someone radiant and strong. I tucked my ring on a chain around my neck under the neckline of my camise. We had agreed not to announce until Yusuf was physically beside me. If someone looked closely, they might see the chain gleaming when I moved, like a private promise. On my way out, I opened the brown envelope where I kept the folded paper from the NECA office, 2 signatures, and 2 printed names and a date that already felt like a beat in a song that had always existed. I put it back safely. I locked my door. The elevator ride down was smooth and slow. In the lobby, the guard tipped his head. "Wedding today, madam?" "Family event," I said. My voice sounded like it came from someone brave. Good. I needed her. Driving to the venue, I rehearsed possibilities. This is what happens when you are used to being blindsided. You develop a private theater in your head. Scene 1, I walk in, someone says something sharp, I laugh it off. Scene 2, I am told Gallery B, and I walk there, chin level, as if I chose it. Scene 3. Someone tries to shuffle me around like an orphan chair. I step aside and let them collide with their own choreography. Scene 4. I leave. Scene 5. I come back the next day with Yusuf. Both of us wearing rings on our hands instead of around my neck, and I say, we have an announcement. The imagined hush. The sputtered tea. The way the world refuses to end just because a woman has decided something for herself. At a red light, I caught myself smiling. In the privacy of my car, I said aloud, "We'll stand there." Saying it made it truer. The light changed. I rolled forward into the weekend that would splinter and then reassemble my life. The venue was one of those places you get lost in because opulence has to include confusion. Ceiling drapes like upside-down waves, fairy lights enwreathing every beam. An archway of marigolds perfuming the air until you felt lightly intoxicated. The valet took my keys with a nod that said he'd already been trained to expect chaos and tips and the eventual return of an auntie who'd scream about scuffs on a bumper. I took a breath within the scent of jasmine and hammering doll beats and told myself, "You're here for Sadia. You're here for your cousin, whose eyes crinkle when she laughs." Just inside, a woman with a headset and a clipboard startled me with her efficiency. "Name, Hannah Qureshi," I said. She scanned a list. "Ah, Gallery B, of course," I said, and the words tasted like a dare on my tongue. I spotted Nita near the entrance, hovering like she was trying to insert herself into 20 moments at once. She rushed over and threw an arm around me. "You look like a goddess." "You look like trouble," I said, taking in her mischievous eyes. She wore green like she meant war. "Come," she said under her breath, "before Auntie sees you and decides your neckline offends her ancestors." We slipped along the edges of the room. From a distance, I saw Aunt Samina gleaming like a polished coin, corralling caterers' lips pursed. She caught my eye and gave me a nod as perfunctory as a stamped document. The nod said, "You showed up good. Remember your place." I nodded back in a way that said, "I may remember it, but I don't accept it." "Don't engage," Nita whispered, pushing a glass of sweet lime into my hands. "Sadia's in the bridal room. She's nervous. You should go say hello before the procession wrangler kidnaps her." "I brought her a gift," I said. "Of course you did," Nita replied, and there was love in her sarcasm. "Because you're the best of us." We wound through a hallway decorated with paper lanterns and framed photos of the couple's journey, which looked suspiciously like an arranged sequence designed to imply spontaneity. I paused at a picture of Sadia laughing on a picnic blanket tanned, felt a tug, a sweet ache. For all her obedient charm, she had always been the cousin who checked on me after a hard day, who sneaked extra gulab jamans to me at Eid. She'd texted me last month. "Promise you won't let Auntie make you feel like a side dish at my wedding." I'd sent back a moon emoji and a bicep flex. We both knew promises were more fragile under chandeliers. In the bridal room, the air smelled of hairspray and roses. Sadia looked like a jewel. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, and for a second all the rules ricocheted off the walls and fell silent. "Hannah," she breathed, then turned, careful of pins. "You're here." "Of course," I said, and held out the bag. "For luck, laughter, and things you'll need when the makeup's off." She reached in and pulled out the compact. "You remembered?" Her smile softened. "You always remember." "I try," I said, and for a moment I wanted to tell her everything to say. I got married, too, and to ask if she would keep my secret until the right time. But there's a rhythm to weddings, like a current. If you try to throw something heavy into it, you might drown. So I kissed her cheek and said, "Breathe. Don't let them choreograph your joy." She laughed. "Tell Auntie that?" I squeezed her hand. She wouldn't hear me. Nita appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. She mouthed, "Incoming." Behind her, I saw Aunt Samina's color-coordinated entourage approaching like a slow-moving tide. "I'll go," I told Sadia, with a wink. "Be magnificent." Outside, the music grew louder. The chatter sharpened with the promise of food and more gossip. Nita leaned in. "I heard a rumor," she whispered. "They're actually enforcing the Gallery B thing, like bouncers. Let them, I said, a steel thread in my voice I didn't entirely recognize. Maybe it belonged to the woman who'd put her signature next to Yusuf's. I'm not a toddler. I can sit where I choose to. But if they want theater, I can be audience. Are you okay? She asked, softer, reading me as usual. I'm okay, I said. And I was, in that precarious way, you're okay when you've decided you'll walk away if someone tries to break you. My phone buzzed with a message from Yusuf. A photo of a boarding pass. Gate change, he wrote. Still on time. I'll be there for the reception. We'll stand there. I stared at the photo until the letters blurred. Come home to me, I typed. Then, because he'd carry me in his pocket for the next few hours, I added, I'm proud of us. Me too, he sent back. Always. I tucked my phone into my clutch and lifted my head. In the distance, Aunt Samina approached, beaming the smile she saves for guests and brand new power. Hannah, dear, she called, voice sugary enough to rot a tooth. This way, please. We have a lovely area arranged for the young ladies. So appropriate. I felt the whole day tipping like a seesaw into focus. Appropriate, I repeated, and my grin felt like a blade she hadn't noticed me sharpening. This was only the beginning. The main event, the one that would bruise and then bloom in two. Something else waited ahead, like a thunderstorm you can smell before it breaks. I squared my shoulders, the ring cool against my skin where it lay hidden on its chain. I could feel the shape of my new life under the old clothes of the expectations around me. Lead the way, Auntie, I said, and stepped forward into the hall of lights, into the hum of the gathering, into the story whose ending I had already quietly written. I followed Aunt Samina's perfectly lacquered finger as she pointed toward the far side of the hall. Her bracelets chimed like tiny bells, each metallic sound underscoring her authority. This way, she said again, softer now, but with that air of finality that meant she expected no discussion. Gallery B, I'd heard of it in whispers, but I thought it was just another exaggeration of my cousins on the family chat. When I saw it with my own eyes, though, my stomach sank. It was literally a partitioned section at the back of the hall, cordoned off with fabric screens that looked like an afterthought. The lighting was dimmer, the floral arrangements thinner, and the chairs, oh. The chairs were plastic instead of the velvet-cushioned ones up front. A few younger cousins, mostly the other single women, were already seated there, fiddling with their phones or pretending to admire the decorations. It wasn't just a seating arrangement. It was segregation, a living reminder of who belonged and who didn't. Here we are, Aunt Samina announced, her voice ringing out loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. Gallery B for the ones who haven't yet found their partners. I felt every pair of eyes turn briefly in our direction, a flicker of pity, curiosity, or satisfaction. Thank you, Auntie, I said evenly, though inside my chest something hot and sharp burned. She smiled, tight and triumphant, then turned on her heel. The hem of her emerald outfit swishing like a curtain closing on a scene. I sat down in one of the flimsy chairs. Nita, defiant as ever, plopped down beside me, ignoring the look our cousin. Miriam shot her. Miriam had clearly chosen to blend into the singles section without complaint. This is humiliating, Nita hissed. It's temporary, I muttered, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. Just let Sadia have her day. But I could already feel the sting of it spreading through me. The way people in the main hall laughed freely while we, the so-called unattached, were corralled like misplaced luggage. As the doll players struck their drums and Sadia's entrance procession began, I leaned forward to catch a glimpse. She looked radiant, her smile fragile but brave, and for a moment I forgot my anger. She caught my eye, and even through the noise, I could read the apology in her expression. But Aunt Samina was hovering close behind her, like a hawk, ensuring the choreography unfolded according to plan. Dinner service began, and with it, another layer of quiet cruelty. Waiters moved gracefully around the main hall first, serving the guests at the lavish tables with steaming biryani, grilled meats, and silver platters of desserts. Gallery B, on the other hand, received smaller portions late. Our food arrived lukewarm, as though the kitchen had already poured its energy into the real guests. Are we? The children's table? Nita whispered, staring at her plate. They just want us to feel invisible, I said, though my throat was dry. Still, I forced a smile, because I refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me break. Then came the moment that would etch itself into my memory forever. During the toasts, a distant uncle took the microphone. He congratulated Sadia and Hamid, shared a few jokes, and then, as if the spotlight weren't bright enough, decided to use the occasion to make a point. And of course, he said, glancing deliberately toward Gallery B, "We pray that the rest of our young women will soon follow in Sadia's footsteps. It is not good for a woman to remain, how shall I say it, unattached for so long. Allah made us in pairs, after all." The hall rippled with laughter. Not everyone laughed, but enough did. Enough to make the sound land like a slap. I felt my cheeks flush hot. The metallic taste of humiliation coated my tongue. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, nails digging crescents into my skin beneath the fabric of my dupatta. Nita whispered fiercely, "Say something, Hannah. Don't let him get away with that." But I didn't. Not yet. Because I had promised myself and Yusuf both we would stand together when the moment came. So I smiled, cold and sharp, and raised my glass of water in a mock toast toward the uncle. He faltered for a moment, clearly unsettled by my boldness, then cleared his throat and moved on. Still, the damage was done. My place in the family had been publicly marked, single, unwanted, other. As the night wound down, I could feel the weight of whispers following me wherever I walked. Cousins chatting in clusters, their eyes flicking toward me and then away. Aunt Samina sweeping past with a satisfied smirk, as though she'd successfully filed me into the category she'd always reserved for me, the cautionary example. By the time I got to my car, I was shaking. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, not from weakness, but from holding myself back. Every cruel word, every mocking glance, every act of exclusion replayed in my head like a relentless loop. They thought I was weak. They thought I was defeated. They thought they could humiliate me into silence. But as I drove home, I touched the chain around my neck, feeling the cool weight of my wedding ring hidden beneath my clothes. And I whispered to myself, "They don't know yet, but soon they will." The Mendy humiliation lingered like smoke in my lungs. By the time the Walima, the grand reception, arrived, I had rehearsed 1,000 comebacks in my mind, but each one dissolved when I pictured Yusuf standing beside me. He was my anchor, my shield, the reason I hadn't already lashed out and torched every bridge in that hall. The night of the reception, I dressed more carefully than ever, not to impress Aunt Samina or to win approval from people who had already judged me, but because I wanted my truth to shine through before I even opened my mouth. My outfit was a deep sapphire lehenga embroidered with silver threads, regal and unapologetic. I wore my hair loose, cascading in waves down my back. And for the first time since our Nekka, I slipped the wedding ring back onto my finger instead of hiding it beneath my neckline. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the single cautionary tale they'd tried to reduce me to. I saw a wife. I saw someone standing taller than their rules. At the venue, the usual chaos brewed, children running underfoot, uncles debating politics near the buffet, aunts fussing over who sat where. Gallery B was still there, set aside for the unattached, but I walked right past it. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step deliberate, loud enough to announce, "I'm not here to play your little game." Aunt Samina intercepted me halfway through the hall, her smile tight as a drum. "Hannah, dear," she said, her eyes flicking to my ring before narrowing. "You're glowing. Trying something new." I tilted my head. "Just being myself, Auntie." Her gaze sharpened. She opened her mouth, but before she could respond, a voice called out from the entrance. "Hannah," I turned, and there he was. Yusuf, my husband. He strode into the hall with the kind of presence that turned heads without trying. Tall, broad-shouldered, his charcoal sherwani perfectly tailored, his smile warm but steady. He was holding a bouquet of lily, my favorite tanned, when his eyes found mine across the room. The corners crinkled in that familiar way that always undid me. The chatter in the hall dipped, just slightly, as people noticed him walking directly toward me. And when he reached me, without hesitation, he took my hand and pressed a kiss to it. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice low enough for me but loud enough to carry. Traffic from the airport was brutal. But I wasn't going to let my wife stand here alone. The word wife detonated like fireworks in the room. I felt the shift ripple through the crowd. Heads turned, whispers spread like wildfire. Eyes darted between my face and my ring and Yusuf's steady presence. "Wife," someone muttered behind me. "Did she say? When did this happen?" My aunt's jaw tightened, her smile frozen. "What? What is this, Hannah?" she demanded, her voice sharp now, cutting through the murmurs. I squeezed Yusuf's hand and faced her fully. "This," I said, raising my chin, "is my husband. We were married 3 weeks ago." A gasp ran through the hall. Sadia, sitting at the front in her bridal finery, clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and maybe delight, though I couldn't be sure. Aunt Samina's face, however, drained of color. She looked like someone had pulled the rug out from under her carefully choreographed world. You married without telling anyone?" "Yes," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "Because it was our decision. Ours alone." The whispers crescendoed. Some guests leaned in eagerly, drinking in the scandal like sweet syrup. Others frowned, disapproving but fascinated. A few, bless them, smiled quietly, as though proud of me for daring. Aunt Samina's voice grew shriller. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The embarrassment you've brought to this family? At your cousin's wedding, no less. Embarrassment." I echoed, my voice rising, clear and firm. "Auntie, you tried to humiliate me at the Mendy. You put me in Gallery B like I was some unwanted burden. You let people make jokes about me being single, as though my worth depended on who sat beside me. But I wasn't embarrassed then, and I'm not embarrassed now. Because I knew the truth that I am married, that I am loved, and that your labels mean nothing." Gasps again. A few aunts whispered, "She's right." Others shook their heads, scandalized. Yusuf stepped forward, placing a protective hand at the small of my back. His voice calm but resonant, carried across the hall. "With respect, Auntie, I don't think anyone here should confuse Hannah's independence with shame. She chose me, and I chose her. That should be something to celebrate." Silence followed, heavy and charged. Even the doll players had paused, their hands hovering over the drums. Then, as though on cue, Uncle Rashid, the same man who'd mocked me at the Mendy, cleared his throat. "Well, at least she's not single anymore." The hall erupted with awkward laughter, some genuine, some forced. But I caught the flicker of discomfort in his eyes when I met his gaze head-on. This time I didn't look away. The rest of the evening unfolded in a haze of whispers, stares, and sidelong glances. Sadia managed to sneak over at one point, her face glowing. "You didn't tell me," she hissed, half angry, half thrilled. "But oh my God, Hannah, you look so happy. He looks amazing." "Auntie's going to faint." "She might," I admitted, smiling despite myself. "You've turned her big event upside down," Sadia whispered, but then squeezed my hand. "And honestly, I'm glad." But beneath the ripples of gossip and shock, I could sense something larger, forming something more than whispers. This wasn't just a revelation. It was a storm gathering. Aunt Samina had spent months curating her daughter's wedding, controlling every detail. And in one moment, with one word, Wi-Fi had shattered her illusion of control. I didn't know then just how far she would go to reclaim it, but I could feel it. The night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I don't think I'll ever forget the way the air felt in that hall after Yusuf said it. My wife. It was like the chandeliers themselves paused their glow, like every pair of eyes in the room sharpened to knives. The word had detonated and the shrapnel flew everywhere. For a moment I thought maybe the murmurs would settle, that people would nod politely, that the evening would resume around Sadia and Hamid. But Aunt Samina, my self-appointed warden, wasn't about to let the moment slip away. She stepped forward, her bangles clinking like warning bells, her face a mask of outrage. You dare humiliate me like this in front of the entire family." She hissed loud enough for the microphone on the stage to pick it up and carry across the hall. Every head turned. Even Sadia, perched at her bridal table, looked stricken. "This is not about you, Auntie," I said, my voice steady though my pulse thundered in my ears. "This is about me. My life, my choice." Her lips curled. "Your choice? You went behind all of our backs, married some outsider without so much as a word to the elders." She jabbed her finger at Yusuf, whose calm expression only seemed to enrage her more. "And then you bring him here to flaunt it? At my daughter's wedding?" The crowd rippled with gasps and murmurs. I could feel the judgment boiling, spilling in every direction. Yusuf's hand found mine, grounding me. "With respect, Auntie," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "We didn't come here to steal attention. We came here to celebrate Sadia, but we will not be hidden. We will not be shamed." The words rolled through the room like a drumbeat. Uncle Rashid, never one to miss a chance to pour salt into wounds, stood and bellowed, "Shame is exactly what this is. A woman marries in secret and then parades her husband here as if it's a badge of honor. What's next, eh? She'll tell us the elders don't matter." I turned to him, my voice rising. "You humiliated me at the Mendi. You made me the punchline of your toast. You put me in a corner like I was less than everyone else. And you dare speak of shame now. The shame is yours, Uncle, not mine." Gasps again, sharper this time. Some clutched their pearls, others hid smirks behind their hands. Aunt Semina's eyes blazed. She motioned to the event coordinator, a young man with a headset, who looked suddenly terrified. "Escort them out," she snapped. "Now, I will not have this scandal at my daughter's wedding." The coordinator hesitated, glancing between me, Yusuf, and the watching crowd. My husband's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. And then, before I could speak, Nita stepped forward. My fierce, fearless sister. "If anyone leaves, it won't be them," she declared, her voice slicing through the chaos. "It'll be me. And half the cousins here who are sick of your rules, Auntie." A murmur of agreement rose up from our side of the family. Miriam, usually quiet, stood too. "She's right. This isn't a scandal. It's a marriage. And if you can't celebrate that, maybe you're the problem." The tide shifted. I saw it in the eyes of our relatives' hesitation, doubt, even quiet defiance. Aunt Semena's composure cracked. Her face flushed, her voice shrill. "Ungrateful children. After everything I have done for this family, you stand here and betray me." Finally, I stepped forward, lifting my chin. The microphone was still on, my voice carrying clearly across the hall. "No, Auntie. You've betrayed us. You betrayed me when you treated me like I was less, because I wasn't married. You tried to break me down to make yourself feel powerful, but you failed. Because here I stand, married to a man who respects me, who loves me, and who gives me dignity, something I never received from you." The hall erupted not in chaos this time, but in applause. Aunts clapping cautiously, cousins cheering outright, even strangers smiling at the spectacle. Sadia herself stood, radiant in her bridal finery. "She's right," she said firmly, her voice carrying. "This is my wedding, and I want my cousin here. If you throw her out, you throw me out too." That was the final blow. Aunt Semina faltered. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty on her face. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then turned sharply on her heel and disappeared toward the back. The tension broke like glass shattering. Music resumed, laughter bubbled up, conversation sparked with renewed energy. And there I was, standing in the middle of it all, Yusuf's hand in mine, applause still ringing in my ears. I had been humiliated, mocked, and excluded. But in the end, justice had been delivered, public, undeniable, and unforgettable. Later that night, as the festivities wound down, Yusuf and I slipped out onto the terrace. The air was cool, the city lights shimmering in the distance. "You were incredible," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I leaned into him, exhaustion and triumph mingling in my chest. "We were incredible together." He smiled. We stood there. And in that quiet moment, the noise of the hall fading behind us, I knew I had reclaimed something I thought I'd lost forever. My voice, my dignity, my place. The morning after the wedding, the house was quiet in a way that felt almost holy. The noise of the reception, the whispers, the applause, the sharpness of Aunt Samina's voice, it all hung like dust that had finally settled. I woke early, Yusuf's arm heavy and comforting across my waist, and stared at the ceiling for a long time, replaying every detail of the night. The humiliation of Gallery B, the sting of Uncle Rashid's mockery, the way the word wife silenced an entire hall, the look on Aunt Samina's face when her control slipped, and the applauso that washed over me like a tide cleansing the sand. I had not just endured, I had claimed my place. Of course, the fallout was immediate. By midday, the family chat was on fire. Some cousins sent heart emojis and clapping gifs. Others posted long voice notes about family respect and how things should be done. One aunt even typed out an entire sermon on obedience, only to have Sadia herself reply, "It was my wedding, and I was proud of Hannah." That message ended the sermon quicker than any debate could have. Still, the rift was clear. Some would never forgive me for shattering the illusion of control, for refusing to bow, for exposing how fragile their decorum really was. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to fix it. A week later, Yusuf and I invited a handful of close relatives to our apartment. Nothing fancy, just tea, samosas, and laughter. Nita was there, of course, radiant with pride. Sadia slipped in quietly, her bangles still jingling like echoes of her wedding. Even Mary Am came, shy but smiling, as if she'd finally found courage of her own. We sat cross-legged on the rug, passing cups of chai, telling stories. No one whispered about Gallery B. No one mocked. No one asked when the next one would get married. We were just people. Family, stripped of performance. At one point, Sadia leaned close to me and whispered, "You know, you gave me courage, right? Seeing you stand up to her, I thought, if Hannah can do that, then maybe I can tell Hamid what I really want instead of just what Mama planned." I squeezed her hand. "That's all I ever wanted, Sadia, for us to live our lives, not the ones scripted for us." She smiled through the shimmer of tears. "You did more than that. You freed me too." Later, after everyone left, I sat on the balcony with Yusuf. The city hummed below us, cars threading like beads on a necklace. He handed me a steaming cup of tea and said, "Do you regret how it happened?" I thought about it. About the humiliation, the sting, the anger. About the way Aunt Samina's words had carved at me for years, shrinking me down until I felt like a shadow in my own family. About the explosion of truth at the wedding, raw and dramatic, undeniable. I shook my head. No. If it had been quiet, private, secret, TIT wouldn't have been justice. They needed to see me, to see us. He smiled, his eyes soft in the glow of the streetlights. Then they saw the truth. As days turned into weeks, something inside me shifted. I no longer walked into family gatherings with my shoulders tight, waiting for the next jab. I no longer rehearsed excuses or dodges when someone asked me, "Any news?" I no longer felt like the independent, butt-lacking woman they had always painted me to be. I was a wife. But more importantly, I was myself, whole, unashamed, unhidden. And every time I caught my reflection, ring glinting on my hand, I thought of the moment I finally spoke my truth into that microphone. The moment the room erupted. The moment justice arrived, not in whispers but in applause. Aunt Samina, of course, has not softened. She avoids me at gatherings, her smile tight and brittle, her voice clipped when forced to address me. But the power she once held over me, over all of us, is gone. Her rules are no longer law. Her decorum no longer defines us. And I find, to my own surprise, that I don't hate her. I pity her. Because she clings to control while the rest of us finally breathe free. One night, as Yusuf and I walked home from the market, he squeezed my hand and said, "You know, in another world, maybe you wouldn't have needed to fight so hard. Maybe they would have celebrated you from the start." "Maybe," I said. Then I smiled, fierce and proud. "But in this world, I fought. And I won." He kissed my forehead the way he always does, and whispered, "We won." And I realized then what I had learned. Family can wound you. Family can try to break you. But in the end, your worth isn't measured by their approval. It's measured by the life you build, the love you claim, and the voice you refuse to silence. So here I stand, no longer the girl in gallery. Be not the side dish, not the whispered warning, but a woman who rose, who chose, and who stood her ground. And when I look at Yusef, I know this is my justice. This is my revenge. This is my happily ever after. And that's how I turned humiliation into justice and silence into strength. If you felt every moment of this journey, don't forget to hit that like button. Nif tells me you're with me. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story of family, betrayal, and sweet revenge. And tell me in the comments, if you were in my place, what would you have done? I'll be reading every single one.